Buffalo right now is the hottest team in the NFL.
See, I think 9 points was flattering to Kansas City.
Maybe this is the year for the Buffalo Bills. What is up with Patrick Mahomes? Nobody in the NFL gets more of a pass.
It was so apparent to me in this game as well that Mahomes was a problem.
Who has it better than Jim Harbaugh? Than Harbaugh?
Nobody! This Chargers team are giving up the fewest points per game on defense of any team who've installed a new head coach in the last 2 decades.
That's a heck of a stat.
He comes in, riles them up, gets everyone going, and then 3 years later, everyone's fallen out with him.
He burns you out, and then he leaves town. That's what Jim Harbaugh does.
Caleb Williams is great. When it's not going good, Caleb Williams tends to add to those problems. And we got to see if he has the ability to lead in dark times.
Look, we have to start with what we dubbed last week the game of the year, because as Josh Allen on that 4th and 2 crashed his way into the end zone, doing what no other team could do to the Kansas City Chiefs and finally defeating them this season, everyone's attention immediately turns to January. Everyone's attention immediately turns to, great, the Buffalo Bills are now 4-1 over the Kansas City Chiefs in the regular season, but 0-3 when it matters in January. And it's clear that it wasn't just the fans thinking this way. As those two franchise-changing quarterbacks came together in the middle, they were already looking forward to the playoffs.
Defeated champion again this year. McDermott beats the mentor. He beats Andy Reid, a huge figure in his life.
There you have it. Patrick Mahomes already knows that they're going to see this Bills team in January. He's already thinking about his revenge. Buffalo on top on Sunday night. But can they finally beat the Chiefs when it matters? Did you see enough difference in this Bills team to say to you, yes, this can be the year that they topple Kansas City?
If this game had been played at Arrowhead, I would be able to say with 100% confidence, yeah, that they can do this. That, to me, will be the difference. But this is what makes this fun. The NFL really needed this. We were on this program last week, Will, and I said, I don't normally sit up here and say, I want so-and-so to win because, you know, I'm not a Bills fan or a Chiefs fan. I'm a journalist. I wanted the Bills to win that game because the NFL needed this. The Chiefs were not good enough to go undefeated. I've been saying that for weeks, 100% right on that one. We needed to see Detroit. We needed to see Kansas City, Buffalo. There's 4 or 5 teams this year that are Super Bowl contenders. The Ravens are falling off. Nobody has run away with it. And so now all of a sudden, you go into Thanksgiving, you go into the holiday season, and you have Buffalo, you have Kansas City, you have Detroit, you have 3 or 4 true Super Bowl contenders, and Buffalo right now is the hottest team in the NFL, along with the Detroit Lions, so we'll get to later in the show. I love what I'm seeing from the Bills. I'm seeing Josh Allen, who is the MVP right now as we speak. Sean McDermott has been coaching a hell of a team this year. The defense is good. The offense is good. This is a better Buffalo team without Stephon Diggs, which I love that storyline. Yeah, the Bills right now, to me, are better than the Kansas City Chiefs, but can they do it, Will, in Arrowhead? Because right now, Kansas City would have home field advantage, and it feels like we're set up for an AFC championship. The Bills and the Chiefs rematch, but it'll be in Kansas City, and that's a difference maker.
You're absolutely bang on. There is so much to love about this Bills performance and so much to break down and discuss about it. But I'm delighted that you cited Sean McDermott because I think you have a rash and an issue of top-tier head coaches in this league who very clearly are incredibly good at their jobs, incredibly good at building a roster, at building them up, at designing plays, but are oddly conservative. Like, guys, Sean McVay, people think because he's an offensive genius, he's not conservative. He's super conservative. Doesn't like going for on 4th down, doesn't like listening to the analytics. Kyle Shanahan, another one, super conservative. Yeah. Sean McDermott appears to have finally had that light bulb go off in his head that when you're facing the Kansas City Chiefs,
you have to go for it.
You have to go for it.
You cannot be Todd Bowles. You have to go for the throat. Josh Allen will go for the throat. Sean McDermott, it felt like in some way, was holding this team back in previous season. It wasn't all his fault. He is a good NFL coach, but you're going against one of the best of all time. You're going against Andy Reid with Patrick Mahomes. You have to go for the throat. And I've covered teams that failed to do that or did it the wrong way, and they ended up paying the price. You have to get it all right when you play the Chiefs. And Buffalo really showed something in that game. They got to do it in January. If you're going to make the Super Bowl, if you're Buffalo, you have to win the Super Bowl. You can't have another Super Bowl loss. But this, I love everything that I've seen about this team thus far. And again, we mentioned these teams before that they have playoff failure, they have letdowns, they have heartbreak, they have frustration, whatever it is. But it feels like Buffalo and Josh Allen specifically, that they've learned from that, they've grown from that, and maybe this is a year. Maybe this is a year for the Buffalo Bills.
A rare thing between these two teams, actually, a game that was won by more than one score. Yeah. And actually, I think 9 points was flattering to Kansas City. Genuinely, Buffalo dominated them for the better part. And actually, it was some fourth quarter wobbles which saw Kansas City able to get back into this game. And yet, when given that 4th and 2, when they could take the points, a chip shot field goal, having already gone for a 4th down in similar distance in the first half and failed to get it, that's normally the sort of thing that for a coach like Sean McDermott would scare him, and then he'd go, right, no, points this time. Got to take the points this time. Instead, they put the ball in Josh Allen's hands, they run that mesh route, he sees it open up in front of him, and he does something that the very special ones do, which is not only does he go and get that 1st down, but he bowling balls off 2 more Chiefs defenders. This much vaunted Chiefs defense rumbles his way into the end zone, carries this team on his back. Cheers of MVP ringing out around Highmark. I just thought that side of it was absolutely sensational.
But I want to get into something. How come Patrick Mahomes is not getting criticized right now? He like nobody in the NFL gets more of a pass. And granted, he has been incredible. He's been Showtime Mahomes. He is a back-to-back Super Bowl champ. He's the next Tom Brady. Patrick Mahomes, and we asked this on talkSPORT End Zone about a month ago, what is wrong with Patrick Mahomes? Patrick Mahomes has almost as many interceptions as he does touchdowns right now. Josh Allen, by far, was the better QB in that game. Josh Allen is the MVP right now. Patrick Mahomes isn't even getting a vote. He's not holding the Chiefs back, but Will, for all the injuries, for all the issues, you have DeAndre Hopkins back for a few weeks now. You still have Kelsey. You still have a good offense. What is up with Patrick Mahomes, and when is he going to fix this?
It was so apparent to me in this game as well that Mahomes was a problem. As I think it was Xavier Worthy's best game since week 1. You still had Travis Kelsey out there making plays. The run game managing, Kareem Hunt somehow managing to roll back the years a little bit as well. We know that the weapons have been an issue, but what kind of astounded me was the Bills were able to bring really high levels of pressure. On over a third of dropbacks, they were getting to Mahomes, despite the fact that they only ever really rush 4. They haven't got the sexiest line. Greg Rousseau's very special, but the rest of the guys, like A.J. Epinesa, these are good players, not top-tier players. And Mahomes, time and time again, was making poor decisions in the pocket, which led to him taking sacks, which led to him not getting the ball out quick enough, which he wasn't seeing open guys at times when you were seeing it on the All-22. And I do think that a combination of how bad that offensive line is, combined with the missing weapons this year, seems to have Mahomes a little bit spooked. And no longer are we getting that great grip it and rip it Mahomes, where he can just take it out and find his guy and get it out quickly. But what we've always had with him in the past is, OK, he doesn't do that, but he's under pressure and he's going to take 12 seconds and run all around the field and then make a completion downfield to Travis Kelsey. That's not there either. And so plan A and plan B aren't there. This offense desperately needs a plan C if the defense aren't going to bail them out.
The Chiefs, they feel vulnerable. And I've been saying, like, I'm not a Chiefs hater. I've come in this program before and say I have no problem with the Chiefs. The fact that they kept finding a way to win was a testament to them and their experience and their talent and the coaching and the leadership and the chemistry and all those big buzzy keywords. But this is a team that could easily be 4-6 this year. That could be below 500. That could be struggling to win their division. And I think that we saw a reminder of that in Buffalo because usually it's a better quarterback that wins a game, especially in the playoffs. Josh Allen was a better quarterback. What's going to happen in January? If Josh Allen is the MVP of the NFL, Josh Allen's playing in Arrowhead, and Patrick Mahomes is still struggling with this offense, as much as we can say it's injuries, Patrick Mahomes should be able to figure this out. And I just have not seen the same Patrick Mahomes this year. And he's always been the bailout, Will. He's always been the player who, no matter what is happening, he will eventually have that drive. That didn't happen against Buffalo. I thought the first series was very, very telling. He throws a ball up that was going to be intercepted. He forces a throw. He cannot do that, but he doesn't get the criticism, I guess, because he's done it before. If that was Lamar Jackson, you would have been hearing all week that Patrick Mahomes was holding back the Chiefs.
So here's why he gets away with it, I think. Because every other week he's been bailed out.
Because he's a back-to-back Super Bowl champion.
Because he's really, really good at football.
Yeah.
No, like back-to-back Super Bowl champion and all those wonderful things we say about him. And he is the best quarterback I've ever watched.
100%. 100%.
I understand why Brady is currently the GOAT, and there's so many other people you could put in that conversation.
No one more talented as a quarterback in NFL history who won Super Bowls than Patrick Mahomes. I fully agree.
For me, every other week he was bailed out. This week, for the first time and this was astonishing, for the first time in 44 games, that defense gave up over 30 points.
That's a good stat.
That's a long time to not give up 30 points in a game. So if that defense starts to falter a little bit, and they did, whenever the Bills were going to the other side of the field from Trent McDuffie, who was an all-pro corner, every other time they went to the other side of the field, it was 9-yard gains, 15-yard gains. They completed on 3rd and long on 6 separate occasions, 2 of those being penalties. And you're just like, that's not something a top-tier defense should be giving up. Then special teams bails him out against the Broncos, so he avoids that criticism. This week, he's bailed out by the fact they were facing the Buffalo Bills, who people acknowledge are the second-best team, maybe the best team in the AFC. The thing for me is you keep saying, what if Josh Allen has to do it in Arrowhead? They're now only a game back on the Chiefs, and they have the head-to-head over the Chiefs. Very tough running for them. They've got to face San Francisco after their bye, 2 Los Angeles who have been improving, and they've got to go to the Lions.
That Lions-Bills game, that now feels like the Super Bowl preview. That is a heck of a football game.
So their next 3 games are very tough. If they come out of those games 3-0,
or
and then
2-1, because here's the thing: I think the Chiefs are going to drop a few more games.
Do you think they're going to drop 2 more games? I've got them dropping 1 more. I really struggle to see them dropping 2 more.
I will not be surprised, because the other part will be, what if are the Chiefs going to have to go to the end of the regular season to win, to secure home field? They haven't faced that in a while, right? But before, the Chiefs would be able to lock it down. Mahomes can rest the last game. That might not be the case this year. This is an NFL season that could go down to the final. Even, we can talk about the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions haven't locked up their division yet, and they still have a really tough schedule. That's why the Bills winning was so big for this season. If you're an NFL fan, it's all still on the table, and we can talk about the Lions and the Bills. We don't know where this is going to go, and that's when it's the most fun.
And number 1 seed, I'm just saying, is still very much in play. And if Buffalo take it, then it gets really spicy, because if they've got to go on the road to Buffalo in the playoffs, I know they did it before, and I know they won there before, but just feels like Buffalo have a little bit extra juice.
The Bills are about 40 or 50 years due.
And they've still got Matt Milano, their best linebacker, to come back. They still didn't have Keon Coleman. They still didn't have Dalton Kincaid. Like 3 of their best players all to come back into this team. If they stay healthy, I'm really liking the Bills to be in New Orleans in February. Right, let's talk about Coach of the Year, because the market for this, the odds have been getting very, very interesting over the last few days, and a new favourite has emerged off the back of Sunday Night Football. Los Angeles Chargers head coach Jim Harbaugh, Coach of the Year. Are you having it, Brian?
Who has it better than Jim Harbaugh? Than the Harbaugh?
Nobody!
Than the Harbaugh brothers will. And so we're filming this. We're going to break down the fourth wall. We're filming this live. And then on Monday Night Football, you will have the Harbaugh brothers going against each other, which is a replay of the Kaepernick lights out in the Superdome, Ravens Super Bowl in New Orleans. Speaking of the Superdome, this is such an incredible matchup for the NFL. And it's one that we haven't been talking about, because we've been talking about the Detroit Lions and Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen and the Bills. This is a cool matchup, number 1. But we're not talking about it, Will, because of John Harbaugh or Lamar Jackson or Derrick Henry of the Ravens. It's because Jim Harbaugh is doing what most people did not, including me, did not think he would be able to do. You're going to be really good with San Francisco. You're going to leave. You're going to go to Michigan. He had issues at Michigan. He finally gets it right. Then he has serious issues with the NCAA, ends up leaving Michigan at the very last second possible. Perfect timing by Jim Harbaugh, by the way. Goes to the Chargers, who had underperformed. Justin Herbert, big contract, huge arm, but, has some issues. Is not the best quarterback in the NFL. Jim Harbaugh's taken all that, and he's just brushed it aside, and he's made it work. And the guy who wears khakis, the guy who drinks milk, he eats steak. Like his whole diet is whole milk and steak. He's doing it. He's
my hero.
Doing it, and he is. There's no way around it. We could get into Mike Tomlin or Jim Harbaugh, or there's Jonathan Gannon. There's several other coaches to get into. But Jim Harbaugh, right now, if I'm voting, he is my coach of the year at this moment.
And look, I think what's really fascinating from a Jim Harbaugh perspective is the culture that he's created. Because you can say a lot about the play on the field. And actually, this Chargers team are giving up the fewest points per game on defense of any team who've installed a new head coach in the last 2 decades.
That's a heck of a stat.
Which, by the way, number 2 on that list, the 2011 49ers with Jim Harbaugh the year that he took over there.
It all comes down to culture.
But he does have this reputation of a little bit of a Jose Mourinho type, where he comes in, riles them up, gets everyone going, and then 3 years later, everyone's fallen out with him.
He burns you out, and then he leaves town. That's what Jim Harbaugh does.
So the question is do they need to be successful super quickly, this Chargers team, or have they got time to build on that culture? I got a chance ahead of this game to speak with Tuli Tuipulotu, the emerging pass rusher of the Chargers. 6.5 sacks over his last 4 games on a line that's got Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa. But I talked to him about, there was a great story last week about Jim Harbaugh on his first week in the building, in his khakis, drinking his milk, jumping into the cold tub with the players, showing that he was just one of the guys.
Which is awesome.
And it turned out that Tuli was one of the guys involved in that incident.
I actually remember that because I was literally in a cold tub with him. So it was pretty funny. It was pretty funny, but man, yeah, very unpredictable.
I mean, what's a moment like that for you? You're a second-year guy. You're still getting your feet under you, and suddenly this national championship, NFC championship, potential Super Bowl head coach suddenly is jumping in alongside you fully clothed.
I mean, it was just funny, man. I just feel like he doesn't feel like he's the head coach. He doesn't feel like he's above us. He feels like he's with us and with us and like a part of this team. Like, I don't know, deeper than just being the head coach. I feel like he's actually has a connection with us and yeah, we're comfortable with him.
So a deeper connection, they feel comfortable with him. And actually, like, we did this a bit with Dan Campbell last week, but I do just want to quickly show a bit of his post-game. I know that this is a bit staged, and they let the team media in and everything else.
He's like the cool dad. He's the funkle. That's what Jim Harbaugh is.
And in no way is that more demonstrated by the fact that rather than game balls, Jim Harbaugh's giving out high fives.
I wanted to hate him at Michigan. And I watched that, and you get why players like to play for him, and they give their all. He gets the best out of his teams. He really does.
Yeah, and listen, there were a couple of really telling moments in that for me. He talked about being a signature win, which for me clearly means he's hearing that noise from the outside. Yeah. This Chargers team look good, but who have they really beaten? Well, now we've beaten one of the best teams in the AFC, even if their record doesn't reflect it. And by the way, we've got the Chiefs in a couple of weeks. That's very much in his mindset. It's the fact that he talked a lot about the way that they won and the way that they looked like they were going to let the Bengals back into the game and sealed it late. But it was the reaction particularly of Derwin James for me, who Derwin James has been one of the best defensive backs in the NFL over the last decade, except injuries have hurt him and being on bad teams have hurt him. He's a guy who, based on talent, could have gone to 3 or 4 All-Pros by now. Did you see how fired up that man was that he was finally on a great team with a great coach and a great defense?
All he got was a handshake. He didn't even get a game ball. He just got a handshake, which tells you that it's working there. Let me ask you, we dealt with this last week with the MVP, and I was sitting up here going on and on about it was too early to give it away. Coach of the year, same way, because it's tight. We have to let this thing play out. But if you had to vote right now, is he your coach of the year, or are you going with somebody else?
So the other one that has to come out right now has to be Mike Tomlin. Yeah. Because when I saw those Steelers appointments at quarterback, when I saw that they brought in Russell Wilson and they brought in Justin Fields, I thought that the level of quarterback play just was never going to reach the heights
in a division where you're going against Lamar Jackson. Yeah. You're probably not winning that division.
And only one viable wide receiver on the team who is a very up and down guy in George Pickens. A line which wasn't at the level it has been in previous years, although has emerged to be now. And a defense that we know is excellent, but has been banged up, had problems at second corner. There was a lot to think about the Steelers team that they would fall off this year. And yet every year I think the Steelers are going to finally not hit 500, have that losing record. They suddenly emerge out of nowhere. To win that game against the Ravens this weekend, despite missing 2 or 3 of their key pass rushers, yes, they still had TJ Watt, they still had Heiberg as well, but for them to go and win that game in the fashion that they did, despite having to score field goals because they couldn't get it done on offense.
6 field goals from Chris Boswell, absolutely fantastic.
And despite the fact that he made that tough decision at mid-season to say, Justin Fields is clearly playing well enough. We are a playoff team with Justin Fields. But we could maybe, if I can just get a little bit of Seattle Russell Wilson out of him, maybe we can be a Super Bowl team.
Is Mike Tomlin making you a Russell Wilson believer with this team? Because last week you were not on the Russell Wilson train.
And then he didn't have a great week this week. They settled for 6 field goals at the end of the day against one of the worst pass defenses in the NFL. So Mike Tomlin has to be up there for me. Him and Jim Harbaugh. I think Dan Campbell's going to be very heavily talked about, and rightly so. This team is 9-1 and flying in the NFC. The dark horse I like, a guy who's kind of got into the top 5 of the betting in recent days, though, is Jonathan Gannon with the Cardinals, because they've got a really good chance of winning that division now. Everyone else is 5-5. Everyone else keeps beating each other. The 49ers keep beating themselves. There is a real opportunity for a team where, not quite a no-name defense, but outside of Budda Baker, I implore the average NFL fan to have named 3 other starters on that defense going into the year. They rotated in 23 players last weekend on defense. That's an astonishing number. And yet, they are beating teams in all phases. They are getting impressive wins over divisional rivals. I always think Coach of the Year, it's an award that Bill Belichick could have won about 10 years straight and didn't win. It's an award that Andy Reid should have maybe won the last 5 years straight and hasn't won, because people like it to go to a story. They like it to go to a team who have been
it's
built
a coach
up
has
from...
turned it around, who's
exactly.
come in. You're not going with chalk, right? You're going with somebody who has a story, who has a narrative. Mike Tomlin fits that perfectly. Jim Harbaugh fits that perfectly. I don't think the Cardinals will be good enough in the end. To me, right now, it's a 2-coach race between Jim Harbaugh and Mike Tomlin. That's another thing, though. You mentioned the division and the Chargers. If the division is still in play in the AFC West, and the Broncos are in there a little, but could Jim Harbaugh, who we weren't even talking about a few weeks ago, could they make a run? They're good enough to beat Kansas City. Could they make a run? And then all of a sudden, Jim Harbaugh is back in the playoffs and maybe playing his brother John in a divisional game. This season is only going to get better. It started kind of weird, and it's really starting to go to that next level right now.
If they beat Kansas City and at that point haven't dropped another game, and then you look at the rest of the schedule and you see Kansas City have to go to Pittsburgh on Christmas Day, and they have the tiebreaker on them. You maybe talked me into the idea that the AFC West isn't off the table, which I don't like. I'm not having it. I think the Chiefs will still win that division. I just think the 1 seed is back in play. Right, let's bring in now the host of Crain and Company. Jake Crain is joining us from the Daily Wires Sports Channel. Absolutely delighted, Jake, to have you on board. How are you doing, brother?
Man, I'm doing great. Really appreciate you guys having me. Really enjoy listening to your guys' conversation, and it's an amazing time in the sports world. Got NFL, college football, college basketball. A lot of the other professional sports are going, but no, I appreciate y'all having me.
You guys cover a huge amount of college football on your channel. Go there and I'm watching your breakdowns, watching your discussions, and we wanted to start off with a little bit on the guys who have come into the NFL this year, right? A historic quarterback draft class, 6 going in the first 12 picks. From what you're seeing, the one I want to ask about is Bo Nix, who some people are talking about in this offensive rookie of the year conversation now. How surprised have you been what he's managed to achieve in Denver, considering what you saw of him coming out of college?
Well, with Bo Nix, and, he went to Auburn and then Oregon. I'm from Auburn. Used to have him on the show all the time, know his family really well. It doesn't surprise me for a couple reasons. One, he was raised in a football family. You look at his father, Patrick Nix, was a quarterback. He was, as we like to say on our show, bathed in the waters of the quarterbacking river as a youngin', and then was able to stay in college for a long time. And you're starting to see that kind of come to fruition in the NFL. Guys being able to play longer in college, they seem to be a little bit more prepared when they take that next step up. But what I think separates Bo Nix, and having Sean Payton there is, obviously Sean targeted him, identified him early, and wanted him. But the thing about Bo that I think a lot of people don't realize is his athleticism, not only to be able to run and take off when it's not there, when he sees man coverage, the DB's backs are turned, but his ability to elongate the play from inside the pocket and outside of the pocket. And as I was a former defensive coordinator, nothing used to scare me more than when the play would break down and the quarterback could make it outside of the pocket, keep his eyes down the field when it turns into a scramble drill, but then also be able to stay in the pocket, step up in the pocket, keep his eyes downfield, and let the routes develop and kind of protect himself even if the protection isn't fantastic. So as far as cerebrally, from a football IQ standpoint, Bo Nix was really far ahead, and his athleticism and the coaching staff, I think, has been a really good mix. And there's some other young guys on the Broncos that have come along with him. You look at Franklin, who was at Oregon with him at wide receiver. So it's a really good situation, and I think you got a lot to look forward to if you're a Broncos fan.
It's kind of fascinating to me, and maybe it comes down to just like the NFL kind of draft industrial complex, but if somebody only heard you talk about Bo Nix there, they'd think you were talking about a nailed-on number 1 overall pick. And yet most people had a late first, second round grade on him. And when Sean Payton came out in those days after they drafted him and was saying, no, this is our guy, this is the guy we wanted, I think a lot of us thought that was bluster rather than legitimate. Like if he'd had the opportunity at Caleb or had the opportunity at Drake May, he would have taken them in a heartbeat. So I guess in a way it's refreshing that it has worked out in that way for him. But do we put too much stock? I'm looking at this year's coming draft class and trying to figure out where guys are going to land. Do we maybe get a little too obsessive on the idea of, right, here's the rankings, here's what Daniel Jeremiah said, here's what X has said, so that must be the quality that they're coming out in?
Well, yeah, I think we do, but it's fun, right? I mean, anything that you're super passionate about, you may get a little bit too deep into. I think maybe one of the most overlooked things, and something that doesn't get talked about enough, it's not just who you're drafting, it's where they're going. I mean, look at where Jaden Daniels is right now with the Commanders and the pieces they have around him. Brian Robinson Jr., Terry McLaurin, I can go down the list. You know, if you're going to a team that has a bad offensive line, like Bryce Young and the Panthers, regardless of the ingredients, football is the ultimate team sport. This isn't baseball where you can go out there and have a pitcher throw 9 innings, give up no runs, and win 1-0. It's not basketball where you can have LeBron James go out there, have a triple-double, and win you the game. It's the ultimate team sport. So having a young guy going into a situation that he can feel comfortable with and he doesn't have to do everything is a huge piece of it. And I think Sean Payton really realized that. Now, when you do look at guys like Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams, all the ingredients are there. It's just the situation that you're stepping into, and it's not just personnel, it's system, right? I know we call it a pro-style offense. We do that because a lot of it is similar. It's a copycat league. It bleeds down into college, even though college is kind of bleeding up a little bit into the NFL. But you really got to look at where they're going, the system they're going in, and the personnel they have around them, including a run game that sets up not only a way to keep yourself balanced on offense, but it's also a form of protection in the play-action pass and, you know, having some semblance of balance and where a defense can't just pigeonhole you and you're living in 3rd and 8.
You just mentioned system. I could not agree with you more, but specifically for Caleb Williams, who Heisman Trophy winner, ton of talent, dual threat, great arm, but he also had issues at USC. He wasn't perfect. His last season, to some people, was a disappointment. He goes to the Bears. The fans want their franchise quarterback, but they also have coaching issues. They have an offensive coordinator issue. From your perspective, is the fit bad for Caleb Williams, or are we also seeing Caleb Williams showing some of the problems that he had in college, and this will be more of a 2-3 year project for this guy to really win at a high level?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, I think you nailed it when you talk about the dysfunction. I mean, if you're going to bring a young person into a home, you want that home to be functional and put them in the best situation possible. Caleb Williams is walking into an organization that feels like he's going to be their hero. Don't forget, guys, the Bears didn't draft Patrick Mahomes and had a chance to do it. So this fan base has been begging for somebody that has some innate ability, that can throw off platform, that can make those wow plays that they feel like they missed out on. But again, the pieces around him really don't put him in the best position possible. And I'm not taking all the blame away from Caleb Williams. He holds onto the ball pretty long. We saw that in college. But to me, this is the biggest test of Caleb Williams going forward. I know the Bears are going to go out there, whether they replace the coach, they replace the offensive coordinator, whatever, and bring in some pieces to continue to help them. Not that they have nothing, but they're dysfunctional across the board. But one of the knocks on Caleb Williams, and I don't know the answer to this yet, is he has some front runner in him. When it's going good, Caleb Williams is great. When it's not going good, Caleb Williams tends to add to those problems. And we got to see if he has the ability to lead in dark times, because that's when you find out everybody can be good when it's going great. But when it's going tough, even as a young guy, can you be that leader? Can you be that mature guy in the locker room that says, look, guys, hop on my back. We're going to figure this out, even if it takes a while. So that's what I want to see with Caleb Williams. But by far and away, guys, Caleb Williams is not the biggest problem that the Bears have. What's going on with Eberflus, I mean, he can't even get his phone to work when they call into the local radio shows there. So it seems there's a little bit of cart going before the horse in that situation.
I think what you point out about him being a front runner is key. But I think actually, when we saw Caleb Williams in London, he played probably his best game of the season because he wasn't pushing too hard. He wasn't constantly looking for the way to prove himself, the way to win. Too often I'm seeing Caleb Williams step up to the line of scrimmage with a really well thought out play. They've got, quads to one side of the formation. They've got the look that they want. They've got everything set up for them. And almost because he's trying to prove himself, he'll make a check and he'll change things. And it's like, look, Caleb, just take that opportunity. And we talked about this about MAHOMES earlier. Grip it and rip it. Just make the play that's there for you. And I think that's what Thomas Brown did this week, was he made it much easier for him to just be Caleb Williams instead of trying to prove that he's Peyton Manning, which Peyton Lee's not.
Well, you know, the best way to beat complexity is with simplicity. We see this on the defensive side of the ball all the time. You know, we used to have teams that we'd play against have 500,000 different formations because they want you to spend time on each one of those formations and have 2 to 3 checks built off of that. When you realize, listen, if we can play man coverage and get away with it, or as we call it over here, cat coverage, I got that cat, you got that cat, he's got that cat, it tends to make things simpler and guys can play faster. But I do want to make this point. We talk about this on the defensive side of the ball as well with targeting and you know, the unnecessary roughness, which don't even get me started on that. There's a balance between not taking your guy's stinger away, but playing smart. You want Caleb Williams to go out there and be himself. You want him confident enough to go in there and make those checks. But he does have to realize, especially in this league, you don't have to go there and try and square everything. If the look is decent enough, let's run the play, let's go fast. Why do you see teams go up to, why do you think sometimes quarterbacks in a 2-minute drill look amazing, but outside of the 2-minute drill, they seem to not be able to figure it out? Well, you're having to go fast for a reason, and you're taking the thinking out of it. So it's a tough line to walk. It's a tough balance to be able to achieve. Hey, we want you to have the full menu. If you want the all-star special, that's fine, but we can make you a steak as well. But let's also remember, just like McDonald's, if we're great at making hamburgers, let's just shut up and make hamburgers.
We'll get you out of here on this one, and we cannot go any farther, Will, without getting into somebody who's not going to be drafted next April, but he's going to be in the center of the entire draft. He also might be the future coach of the Dallas Cowboys. But Deion Sanders in Colorado, I don't know where your mock draft is right now, and for me, it's too early to have a real mock. But Travis Hunter, Shedeur Sanders, you know, the New York Giants bench Daniel Jones. They're obviously tanking. Maybe they want to end up number 1, but you look at Colorado, Deion Sanders, there's so much going on, but there's no way around it. When the 2025 draft comes around, the Colorado Buffaloes and Deion Sanders are going to be in the center of all of this. How do you think this all plays out?
Well, you know, the best part for the Giants, and probably the saddest part, is they don't have to try and tank. They can just go out there and play. I can't believe they benched Daniel Jones. But looking ahead, when you look at Shedeur and Travis, and you guys know this better than anybody, it comes down to need, right? If a team needs a quarterback and they're picking between Cam Ward and Shedeur, and they take Shedeur, well, that's what they need. But if I'm looking at somebody to hire, I want to hire the guy that can do the most things the best. And that's what Travis Hunter is, right? He's kind of a rarity. We've seen guys play both ways, but really not to this level and not being this effective. We'll see what happens at the NFL level. I think there's a better chance he plays wide receiver. But if I'm going to hire you to be a lawyer, I would love for you to be able to do all different type of cases, all different type of law. If I'm going to hire you to bag groceries, you need to be able to bag the Pringles can and the milk. So if I want to go get the best player that can provide me with the most avenues for them to have the success, and then in turn us to have success, I think Travis Hunter is going to be that guy. But I tell you, it's so impressive what Prime has done at Colorado. And, you know, I get into arguments all the time on this show with our 2 other co-hosts. I think if Deion Sanders leaves Colorado, it won't be to stay in college. It will be to go to the NFL, because deep down, we can sit here and talk about how he's resurrected the Colorado program and what he did earlier at the HBCU. But Deion Sanders is an NFL guy, and I think he views himself as an NFL guy, and that is the highest level of football. We already know what he did as a player, so I would not be shocked at all if once his sons leave, we see Deion Sanders with a job in the NFL while his son, Shedeur, definitely plays.
How does Jerry Jones not hire them? Mike McCarthy is gone. He's a dead man walking. How does Jerry Jones not hire Deion Sanders and let him go somewhere else?
Because Deion Sanders is a bigger name than he is. I think this is more about Jerry than it is anything else. You don't want, I mean, we see this in politics all the time.
Deion's too smart.
I may not
agree.
want to bring in the I may not want to bring in the best vice president because they may overshadow me on the campaign trail. So you see the same thing with Jerry Jones. I think it's an ego thing, and it's a detriment to the Cowboys. So sitcom dad Mike McCarthy, he's probably on his way out. And again, I got a lot of respect for Mike and what he's done. But I don't think Jerry wants to bring in Prime because Prime is a bigger name than what Jerry is.
I really wanted to not believe the Deion Sanders thing was going to work. Like, you see him at small school, you see him in Kentucky, you see this kind of like the bluster, the going on shows, the shooting people down on social media and in public, like just everything about it felt like it was meant to be a superstar that wasn't going to be able to actually handle the coaching side of it. And yet from everything you hear and everything you see on the field, he's really good at all of that stuff as well.
He is the coach for the NIL era. Like he is the, you know, whether you love it or hate it, who understands playing both ways, making it all about himself, money, pay me before, you know, you have to look good to play good. Who understands that better than Deion Sanders?
I think college, certainly in this country, is going through a little bit of a boon as well, because Obviously, it's huge in the States, right? We know the coverage, we know the levels, we know that the playoffs expanding to 12 games. Although we've seen you've had some thoughts on the playoff committee in recent days that maybe we could get into sometime. But I think over here, with the combination of those big coaches, big personalities, getting McAfee to do the college game day and all the clips that come out of that, and you're just seeing, I see so much more coverage over here. And I find it really,
he knows
a real
better.
boon.
The college football in America is the second biggest sport in America. There's the NFL and college football, and it destroys the NBA and everything else.
Guys, I've got a theory real quick on that. I know we got to get out of here, but I really believe if we want to either achieve world peace or destroy the world, we need to make college football global. Because it's either going to go one of those two ways with the amount of passion over there. And I challenge anybody, over on your guys' side of the pond, if you want to see an incredible atmosphere, come over to the United States, go to an SEC college football game on a Saturday, and it will absolutely blow your mind because it's our way of life versus their way of life every Saturday, and it's a lot of fun.
Brilliant stuff, Jake. Thank you so much for your time. Where can people find your channel, find your content?
Well, man, first off, thank you guys for having me. Again, got a lot of respect for the way you guys handle your business. We're really easy to find. Go to the Daily Wire, Daily Wire Plus. Go to YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. There's a bunch of other platforms. I'm not smart enough to understand where it's at, but it's CRAIN and Company. We have a good time. Like we say, we may not always agree, but we always have fun.
Jake, that was great.
Thank you very much.
You can still hear us, man, but thank you. That was good, brother.
Thank you, guys. Anytime you need us, please let us know.
All right,
Love it. Thank you so much, man. Jake, I thought was brilliant there.
That was fantastic.
I think I always talk to people about this when they ask me about going to watch games in the States and going to tailgating being a big thing of it, right? There's nothing better for me than going and seeing an NFL game in person, particularly if I get to go as a fan. But I've been to some college football games that have absolutely blown my mind. And you go to the big house, or I always use the example, I went to a Penn State whiteout game at Beaver Stadium against Michigan that went to 4 periods of overtime, and there were 107,000 people there, all dressed in white, loud the entire time, and I've never experienced anything like it. It was like an out-of-body experience.
So,
wild. Speaking
of somebody who lived most of their life in the United States and covered American sports for 20 years, college football, I mean, we could spend the whole program on this, but college football, far better atmosphere than the NFL. The only thing, and he was 100% right, the only thing that's comparable to the passion, the power, the pageantry, the colors of fans of college football is Premier League. And that's one of the things I've loved so much about Premier League is you go to a match and the fans, the cheer, you don't get that as much from the NFL. The NFL, as much as they're into it for me, it's a little more professional. The passion that comes out of college football, and it's why American fans love it so much. The only thing that's comparable is Premier League and the passion that the supporters have over here. I think he was 100% on about that.
Right, let's get to our extra point for this week. And mine comes with a slightly...
I don't know where you're going. Let's see where this goes.
Hung head of sadness. I came on this show after week 1 and seeing the 49ers talent and seeing how good that rookie draft class was looking, and they still do look excellent, and saying, I invited people back on the bandwagon. I clicked the back of it. I said, come on.
I remember that.
Guys, I'm sure you've all disembarked by now, but if there's any stragglers, the bandwagon...
There's nobody left.
The wheels are off. The horses have bolted. There is no bandwagon left in existence. This team are sat 5-5 right now, have not beaten a team with a winning record this season, and for the 3rd time this year have held a 4th quarter lead over a divisional rival and thrown that game away. What I find almost most frustrating about it is that there isn't a single identifiable problem. It's like the antithesis of what we've seen with the Kansas City Chiefs this year, where every week they find a way to win. These 49ers find a way every week to lose. So one week the special teams will be an absolute clown car. But against the Chiefs, they'll pick Patrick Mahomes off 3 times, but then their red zone offense will fall off a cliff and they'll lose a game that they had every opportunity of winning. And it feels like every time they can't get out of their own way. And I increasingly feel like this is a Kyle Shanahan problem. Kyle Shanahan's a guy who, coming out of Atlanta, coming into San Francisco, I couldn't have been happier with the hire as a fan. And I genuinely think that he has revolutionized where this team was in a way that we talked about Jim Harbaugh earlier. And he came in and had that flash in the pan 3 years. But being Jim Harbaugh, they were flash in the pan. They were, I'm going to raise this team up and then they're going to fall apart when I leave. Kyle Shanahan has changed how this organisation works and looks. And the draft class is so good. I still have positivity that this isn't going to be one of those things that once they pay Brock, they're never going to be able to be successful again. But the guy has lost now 3 Super Bowls when he's had a fourth quarter lead, because that Atlanta one has to fall on him as the offensive coordinator. He's lost multiple NFC Championship games when he's had a fourth quarter lead. He's now losing games in the regular season. He makes terrible timeout decisions time and time again. The play calling just looks like he gets panicked the moment he gets in the red zone. And I feel like he has got to a point where he's so in his own head about all of this that they almost need to have a terrible year like the year when Garoppolo went down and they went 4-12 and picked right at the top of the draft. So they need something to reset it, because right now the mentality of this team is all over the shop. Now, maybe they go on the road to Green Bay and they win this week. Green Bay didn't look that good against Chicago. And maybe they then go to Buffalo and get an upset, and suddenly they're 7-5, and I'm back here going, bandwagon's back on, boys. But for a team that is arguably the most talented top to bottom in the NFC, to be sat at 500 in a division where everyone else sat at 500 could not be more disappointing.
They're one of the biggest disappointments in the NFL. One of the biggest disappointments in the NFL. I will give you the biggest disappointment in the NFL. Not that they were going to be Super Bowl contenders. Here's my extra point. It is, I started this year coming on talkSPORT Rundown talking about the Jacksonville Jaguars, and for this, I guess maybe because a couple years ago it felt like they were going to be contenders, and you had Trevor Lawrence, and this is a franchise that had been through it, but they've actually had winning. Like, everyone forgets, the Jaguars have been winners before. They have been in championship games. They almost beat the Bill Belichick Patriots with Leonard Fournette and a great defense in New England.
Miles Jack was not down. They would have won that game of football.
And they very well make the Super Bowl. They had a good enough defense and a running game to win that Super Bowl with Blake Bortles as your quarterback. But now they're here. Now they are 2-9, and Doug Peterson is too smart and too bad as a coach to answer questions to the media. Trevor Lawrence has completely regressed, and I wrote about this at talksport.com. They have one choice for me. We could debate who is the best hire, but if you're going to go left and right and do all these things, you have to hire a proven winner. You're not going to pull somebody out of college. One of the worst decisions that Shad Khan has made since he bought the Jaguars was this whole Urban Meyer idea, which really, in retrospect, set this franchise and Trevor Lawrence back years. I don't know if Trevor Lawrence can be fixed at this point. The one person who would know would be Bill Belichick. And I would love to know when Bill Belichick puts the game tape on, he sits down and wherever he sits in some weird little room in Nantucket and looks at Trevor Lawrence, can he be fixed? Is this defense good enough? Because you have talent. Shad Khan comes out before the season and said, this is the best roster we've ever had. And they are the worst team in the NFL. Doug Peterson should be fired already. And if I'm Khan and I'm worth $13.5 billion, he's had more success with Fulham than Jacksonville. Turn it all over. Turn it over to Bill Belichick. But I mentioned this at talksport.com. I don't know if Belichick would take it, because he has to believe that Trevor Lawrence is good enough to be fixed. He doesn't want to do a rebuild. They have so many questions again in Jacksonville. And this is a team and a franchise that just cannot get it right. They can have a new stadium. They can play in London twice. But they're not even well run enough to figure out that everyone else in the world would have fired Doug Peterson already, much like Mike McCarthy with the Cowboys. They don't have a Jerry Jones problem. They have a Jacksonville Jaguars problem. I would turn the whole thing over to Bill Belichick.
My concern is that turning the whole thing over to Bill Belichick gives you a Bill Belichick problem. Because
he won 6 Super Bowls.
We are at a point where now, 10 months removed from his firing in New England, mutual departure, whatever they want to call it, where people are starting to look at this through rose-tinted spectacles. And don't get me wrong, greatest NFL coach of all time, for my money, certainly of the modern era. The fact that he basically coached 2 Hall of Fame careers at that team and also carried the Giants to 2 Super Bowls as a defensive coordinator. Like, the guy is as great as they get. But post-Brady, he showed the real unwillingness to fix the problems they had there, to fix the problems with the coaching staff. You know, he's bringing in former failed defensive coordinators to run his offense, thinking that that's the smart idea, instead of buying into going to the McVay or the Shanahan tree and finding one of those exciting young coaches coming up and turning over the offense to them. Bad choice at quarterback with Mac Jones. That falls on him as well.
Cam Newton didn't work out at all either.
He had a terrible 4 years before he left that job. Is he now, with a year removed, yes, he's got all the gloss back on him, and yes, suddenly he's the prettiest belle of the ball, But is he also been able to take stock and go, right, if I do this again, I've got to approach it like it's 2001, 2002 in New England, not like I was when it was 2021 and I just won my 6th Super Bowl, but now I don't need to really... Everything's going to work because it's me.
He's better than Urban Meyer. He's better than Doug Peterson. I don't trust Jacksonville to hire somebody else who's going to be better than Bill Belichick. And he could take that roster, especially the defense. He could turn them into a winner next year.
The only thing I'd say, and you said this about whether or not he'd take the job, is when you suggested that, when I saw your piece on talkSPORT.com, I went and looked at the hot seat rankings. I went and looked at the teams that may move on from their head coach this offseason, already have. And there's a few obvious ones. The Raiders is an obvious landing spot because Tom Brady's there as a minority owner, and, you know, there's that link. And everyone is going to make that.
Belichick in Vegas would be a lot of fun.
And
right?
Belichick in Vegas.
He's a very Vegas guy.
I'm concerned with his, you know, personal life choices. Him moving to Vegas might be bad for him and his health. But fair play, that is potentially a fun choice. Hey, maybe San Francisco after the conversation we've just had about Kyle Shanahan. That would be wild. But the one that really stood out to me is the Cincinnati Bengals. Because he gets to go there with premier pass rush, premier quarterback, premier wide receivers. If they burn it all down after this season, if Zach Taylor, they finally move on from him, ironically in the year when he finally realises his offensive line isn't good enough and he starts doing something to fix it, then they move on from him. Duke Tobin, you look at the last, as a GM, you look at the last 4 drafts, they've been poor. The free agency choices have been poor. They've not retained the right guys. Maybe that comes down to ownership, and maybe that's the problem, and why he wouldn't take the job, because ownership aren't going to give him the opportunity to win. But if they decide to burn it down and go and make a big, bold choice and are willing to back him, and all of this Belichick stuff's got to be that they are willing to go, yes, here are the keys to the kingdom, right? But if the Bengals are willing to do that, they become AFC Super Bowl favourites next year with Bill Belichick in charge.
Bill Belichick with Joe Burrow would be absolutely dangerous.
Terrifying thing. Terrifying thoughts to finish off a brilliant show. Brian, thank you so much,
Thanks,
as always.
Will. Loved it. That was fun.
Brian T. Smith, Will Gavin, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave your comments on our YouTube channel, talkSPORT End Zone. Thanks, Brian. Thank you to Jake Crain for joining us as well. Brilliant stuff from him. We'll be back next week, plus exclusive player interviews coming throughout this week as well. We'll see you then.